Hi, my name's Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. We're here with the brand new 2017 Porsche Cayenne. Is it any good? Let's take a look. Quite a lot has changed this year with the Porsche Cayenne, but they're very keen to make sure that we still understand that sportiness is the #1 requirement. We have a 1.98 m width or 6'6", and boy does it look good. A lot's changed around this car, but let's start at the front. We now have LED headlights on all models. Now, if you want to upgrade them, you can now get 84 independent bulbs, which offer you things like cornering assist and also adjustments for nighttime driving. That's nice. The way they're fitted into the styling certainly adds to the overall feel. We have larger air intakes on both sides, and as you can see, the design lines go straight across the front. That gives its car its aggressive stance on the road, but still looks very stylish indeed. The Cayenne is now 4.92 m or 16'2" in total length, and that is longer than the predecessor, but interestingly, the wheelbase has remained exactly the same. So you might think that you'd notice a little bit more in the way of overhang at the front and the rear, but the styling means that you don't notice that at all. Characteristically, if you have a look at the way that the shoulder line sweeps up here, it's actually higher than the bonnet is at the front. And that really adds to the dynamism, especially when you include it with this sloping roofline that drops off. The car looks like it's moving even when it's stationary. That, of course, is helped by the wheels. For the first time, we have a variable wheel size from front to back. That, of course, is something that's borrowed from the 911, along with several other design features. We have brand new tungsten carbide brakes. They are an optional extra and only come with the largest wheels. That means that there's less brake dust, so you can keep those lovely, lovely new wheels looking immaculate. Let's talk about the design at the rear. Well, I'm really happy to hear Porsche emphasizing the fact that for a lot of people, the rear of this car is as close as they're going to come to owning one, but it really is important in terms of selling the car to the general public. And for me, stylistically, this hits all the right buttons. I love the way that the lighting strip goes right the way across through both of the rear lights. It subtly and discreetly emphasizes the Porsche logo, so you know exactly what you have without being overblown by it. The rear view is nice, again discreet. We've done a really nice job with stylishness here. I would definitely say we get a very good impression of both the speed and performance of this car without it telling us too much, hey, look at me. So we told you that the car has actually gained a little bit in length, and we can see that has been well used when we actually look inside the vehicle. If we have a look at the boot back here, we now have a total load space of 770 litres. That is an improvement of 100 litres on the predecessor. So you should be able to fit more than whatever you need in the back. Let's take a look inside and see what's happening in there. Well, the Porsche designers have made a big deal of telling us that they want to make sure that the modern is mixed with the traditional. And of course, the place where you really feel that most is in the cockpit design. They wanted to get a balance between digital and analog. And visually, at first glance, they've done a nice job. We have a large analog dial in the center, but off to the side, we have 7 inches worth of digital display. So that allows us the flexibility of showing exactly the information that we want, at the same time as not feeling overwhelmed by modern technology. And that's a nice idea. These cars obviously should be around for a while, and you don't want them to look dated after you've only had them for a couple of years. Now, in the center, we have Porsche's new showpiece in infotainment, a 12.3 touchscreen This is the latest Porsche Advanced Digital Display, and as you can see, it's been laid out right in the center of the dashboard. That's to make sure that everything is on the same eye line as you look at it. Although I have to say, at first glance, when you include the driver's controls on the steering wheel, the analog display above it, the digital displays next to that, and the digital display right in the center, combined with all of the operating functions below, it does look a little bit cluttered in here, but I'm sure that you would get used to that as you use the car. So talking about those functional controls slightly lower down, as you can see, they've all been set into a glass mounted surface. That allows you to have a touch interface with the controls, and they all provide haptic feedback. I don't know how much I like this right off the bat. It looks very stylish and possibly even futuristic, but it's going to be hard for you to grab for something when you just want to change one of the adjustments. That said, we've got nice inset temperature controls that are very easy to get in contact with, and generally they are the most important thing while you're driving, and everything else I'm sure you would get the hang of as you come to use it. The overall effect is definitely one that is very modern. I know that what they said they wanted to achieve was a digital analog mix, but I think you have more of the digital feel here in the center. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm very keen to see how it behaves while you're using it, while you're driving. We can see here the analog clock featured in the chrono package. And of course, as you'd expect for such a car, rather than having a traditional analog clock, we have a countdown timer that works backwards with a digital clock right in the center of the display. So here you get a look at the headroom available in this car, and we have a full panoramic roof which goes right the way back to the second row. I'm 5'10" in height, or 178 centimeters, and as you can see, I have more than enough space at the head here. And that's particularly impressive when you consider that the overall height of the car has decreased by 1 centimeter from its predecessor, and that's without losing any interior room at all. So this is now the third generation of Cayenne, and there have been over 760,000 units sold of this car so far worldwide. And I think when you sit in one, you really do get the feeling as to why that is. There's a lot of questions often asked about, can an SUV be sexy? And I think Porsche really try hard to define that the answer is yes. The seating position and the overall experience of being in this car is really nice. If you've sat in a 911, you'd find it hard to imagine that that experience would translate to a larger vehicle. But here it definitely does. Now, I am sitting, as you might be able to see, in what could only be described as a leather lover's paradise. There are very few surfaces here that one way or another haven't been coated in the stuff. So that might be your thing, it might not be your thing. I'm hoping as we progress through the development on the vehicle, there will be lots more choices available to you as a customer. But in the meantime, as far as the look and the aesthetic go, it really clearly works. The car is stylish. I'm not completely convinced by the amount of information that we have on display here, but that said, I have a distinct feeling that once you sink into the seats, which it has to be said are very comfortable, and focus on the road, which with your elevated driving position is certainly not a challenge, that really isn't going to be what you're thinking about. Everything about this car says, drive me, and that is most emphatically what we want to do. The skin of this car is now 100% aluminium, and that results in a weight saving of 65 kilograms across the vehicle. Clearly that's going to have an impact on the power to weight ratio of this car. We're going to talk about the engines in a little bit more detail and let you know what that means. I'm really surprised to say that in 2017 this car still comes with a cigarette lighter, and in case you think that's just for show, amazingly, it still comes also with an ashtray. I have no idea which focus group suggested that that was still necessary, but I guess in certain customer groups it still is. Behind that, we have a little storage area here, 2 USB charge points and inductive charging for a mobile phone. It's not a particularly large storage area, but I think you've got a lot more spaced out around the rest of the car, and that's not going to be your primary concern when you're driving. Hopefully, you're going to get the best of this driving experience, but if it takes you a while to learn how best to address all of that power, don't worry. You can tell your passengers to relax. they have an extra handle back here to hold on to. There's plenty of storage elsewhere throughout the car. If you can see, we have quite a generous glove box, and the storage spaces in the doors are more than sufficient for anything you could want to put in them. So if you're not concerned about carrying backseat passengers around, clearly there's already a Porsche for you. This car is aimed at people who need to fit a little bit more than just themselves into the vehicle. So clearly we have to show you what it's like back here. The answer is, as you'd expect, really pretty nice. We see more of this analog meets digital styling in the back section here. This offers both of the rear seat passengers their own opportunity to control their climate. We have 2 USB charge points. One of these cigarette lighters, again, I have to just show you this for detail. I understand it's just a 12-volt port. I'm just astonished that in this day and age we still even see this logo. Below that, we of course have a rear passenger's ashtray too, and some nice back of the seat storage. Now, the rear of this car is about comfort, and I have to tell you, I feel more than comfortable back here. We also have an armrest with built-in drinks holders. I thought there was something secret and special to show you there, not so much. The seats flip down, he said optimistically. Come on, Michelle, you told me I could flip the seats. Where's the catch? He's going to come in and help me out here. Now you're just showing off. Come on. So you can... There we go. That sounds good. You can actually get right the way into the boot from inside the car while you're still in here. And you get a really good look through, and you can see just how much storage space there is when you collapse all of the seats at the rear. So this is the lever that Michelle pulled in order to get the seat down. If I just give that a gentle touch, we can get the seat back to its original position. There we go. For the first time with this Cayenne, we have variable wheel sizing, and that gives us all the more control that we want. And also optional for the first time, rear wheel steering. We have a really great cutaway here, so we can have a closer look at just what that means to the layout for the rear of the car. So there has been an increase in price on these models, but you can start to get an idea of why. The standard equipment is very impressive on both of the introductory models. Here we can see the 3-chamber air suspension, which now comes fitted as standard. So let's see what's powering this beast. Well, come on, Porsche have taken away a little bit of the fun of looking at the engine by covering it so extensively, but all of that helps to add to sound deadening, and we can imagine what's beneath. We do know that cars now come with an 8-speed Tiptronic gearbox, and they're going to be connected at launch to one of 2 new 6-cylinder engines. There's a 3-litre producing 340 horsepower, which is 40 horsepower more than its predecessor, or you can get a 2.9-litre V6 bi-turbo. That comes on the Cayenne S, and that produces 440 horsepower. That's 20 horsepower more than its predecessor. More than enough to propel you to 0 to 100 in under 5 seconds. So a quick word now about pricing. The entrance now comes in just shy of 75,000, with the S coming in just shy of 92,000 euro. That's 4,000 and 7,000 more respectively. Ouch. But they do now come with a lot more in the way of standard equipment. Here we can see not just another outer color, but also a different interior finish. So let's talk about what that standard equipment now looks like. Well, you now get active all-wheel drive as standard, 4D chassis control, 3-chamber air suspension, Porsche dynamic chassis control, and electronic roll stabilization. So before we get to see the unveiling of the 3rd generation of the new Porsche Cayenne, we've been lucky enough to get a behind-the-scenes look at the Porsche Museum, and we've just discovered a 1954 Porsche 550 Spyder. I don't know, Michelle, do you think we can fit that in the bag? I'd like to give it a try. This is a 1956 Porsche 550 Spyder, and this car was made famous by James Dean, who somewhat affectionately knew it as My Little Bastard. Well, I think if you've ever had the luxury of driving one, you'd understand why it got that nickname. But he made this car famous, sadly not for the right reasons. It was the last drive he ever took. But what a way to go. This 1973 Porsche Carrera is the first one to bear its name. It was the fastest car of its generation and the first to feature the famous ducktail at the back. Well, it's really a pleasure for me to stand in front of something that for once is just slightly older than I am. We've managed to find the Cayenne's prototype, and as you can probably tell with a quick glance, Porsche are very keen to point out with this car that it is not just for on-road use. This has been suitably abused, as you can see, and some of the testing that they've done with this car is extreme to say the least, from the hottest to the coldest places on Earth, only to make sure that they've ironed out any creases there could be before the launch. Well, if that hasn't whet your appetite to give it a test drive, it's certainly whet mine. Here we have the 2012 Porsche Cayenne GTS, a special edition which produced a monster 420 horsepower. They really wanted to make sure that this car gave you as much power as you were hungry for. And what's particularly exciting for me here is how you can see that the visual aesthetic of the car has changed so much from 2012 to this year's brand new release. So, say Porsche to most people, and what they're going to be thinking of is something like this classic 911. Sporty, fast, beautifully designed. But it wasn't only ever sports cars that Porsche were into. Take a look at this. This beauty is a Porsche tractor, designed in 1956. Now, you might think, well, they just designed that for a bit of fun. But no, they actually sold 120,000 of these by 1963. Interestingly enough, it is somewhat unsurprisingly a diesel engine. Why is that interesting? Well, at the launch of the Cayenne, we're expecting 2 petrols in their initial lineup, but so far, no mention of a diesel. Maybe, just maybe, this could be one of the last ones. Of course, we couldn't take you around the Porsche Museum without at least a nod to their fantastic racing history. This is the 1968 Berg Spyder, and its design brief was to come in as light as possible. Unbelievably, it managed just 384 kilograms. Now, that's thanks to a largely plastic and aluminium chassis. It was designed with a mid-engine for hill climbs, and what it resulted in was an extremely fast, agile car. But I ask you, how fast are you going to want to go in a car that weighs as little as this, with as little protection as this? Well, how about this then? The 1922 Sasha. Named after its financier, it effectively launched the racing career of Porsche in Sicily, and since then was extremely successful in many of the races it took part in. Isn't it a beauty? You could say that this is the forerunner of all of the modern day racing Porsches. So what do we think about the new Porsche Cayenne? Well, obviously it's a little bit of a torture asking us what we think about this car without being able to drive it, but I have to tell you, if it drives the way it looks, then I'm going to be more than happy. I really like the way that the new styling means a slight reduction in height and a slight elongation of the body. That really makes it feel much more dynamic. And if you compare it to a sister car, which is also built on the same platform, the Q7, for me, this is definitely the sexier of the two, but that said, it is significantly more expensive. Now, hopefully, we're really going to be able to feel that in the drive as well. Visually, I think this is stunning. Again, like with so many other Porsches, it does a superb job of looking amazing without overdoing it and really making people feel too annoyed that you own one and they don't. So, will all of this style and the new engines translate into something that gives you as much thrill to drive as a 911 does? We're just going to have to wait to find out. But meanwhile, if you have any questions that you'd like answers to, please put them in the comments below. Please give us a like, and we hope we'll see you again next time.